This is Janet Mason, bringing you the reflection that I wrote and presented to the Unitarian Universalists of Mt. Airy. The theme of worship is presence. I am a practicing Buddhist, if not a card-carrying one, and always liked Buddhism as my root religion in my Unitarian Universalist world. But the fact is that we all exist in the present moment, whether we identify as Buddhist or not. Presence. This month's worship theme means not thinking of the past with regret and of the future with anxiety or fear. In my experience, presence can increase the love and hope in our lives. Something that is needed now more than ever. When I write, I enter a kind of meditative state that is based on presence. Recently, I've been revising my memoir titled Lost. A daughter navigates father loss and discovers what it means to belong. This memoir is about the 5 years after my father died in 2017, a great period of change for me. In the process of writing, I entered a meditative state and imagined meeting my paternal grandmother, someone who died before I was born. I invite you to take a breath with me now and enter this brief excerpt with me. When my parents went to visit my paternal grandmother, Florence, my father would go out with his buddies to one of the many tap rooms marking the corners of Fishtown. The tap rooms or bars were known for their huge windows made of squares of glass, so thick you couldn't see through them. When I was young, during the few times I would visit Fishtown, I remember seeing the ladies' entrance sign on the side of the corner bars. This meant the women sat separately from the men. When he was first married and visiting the old neighborhood, my father liked to drink and hang out in the tap rooms with his buddies. When my parents went to visit my father's mother, he went to see his old buddies in the tap room and left his wife with his mother. Maybe they couldn't believe he did this, even if it was a norm for male behavior. My mother told me they sat in the same room in awkward silence. Maybe they were silent because they didn't know what to say. It's also possible my grandmother would have seen my mother as worldly or from another world. My mother had waited until she was 25 to get married. My grandmother married at 17, going at 18, and proceeded to have many babies. Both my maternal and paternal grandmothers worked in factories. My mother worked in an office. My mother had her first and only child 10 years after the death of my paternal grandmother. I still remember sitting in their parlor, looking out the front window into the narrow street where ragged children played stickball. We had nothing to say to each other, my mother had commented when I was a preteen. I think of my grandmother, Florence Jones Mason, sitting in the parlor. Since she died when she was 48, I consider her as having been young. She would be about 15 years than I am now. I imagine meeting her. There might have been a dark green couch with small triangular patterns on it. Florence's stubby arm would have rested on the armrest, on top of an embroidered lace doily, covering the spot many arms had rubbed shiny. I would be sitting in an armchair near the front window of the row house she lived in. In my mind, there'd be no need for conversation. There would be no sentimentality or awkwardness. It wouldn't matter if our politics were different. I wouldn't have to worry about coming out as a lesbian to her and be concerned about her response. There would be no ideological differences to separate us. I imagine us sitting quietly and doing a Buddhist exercise of being together. Inhale suffering and exhale kindness. My grandmother does the same. As we inhale deeply and exhale, we absorb each other's essence and acknowledge we are part of each other. Remember, the present is something we can take refuge in. When we breathe in and out, it can make us stronger. I invite you to take a breath with me now. Namaste.